Bonjour mes amis, je suis Boris Brott, le directeur artistique de l'Orchestre classique de Montréal et nous avons aujourd'hui trois invités, compositeur Kevork Andonian, soliste soprano Aline Coutin et une de nos violonistes qui nous a aidé beaucoup à avoir des partitions particulières pour ce programme, Van Arminienne. Et moi, je suis Boris Brott, comme vous le savez. On va faire cette petit entretien en anglais et aussi en français. Hello, everyone. My name is Boris Brott. I am the artistic director of the Orchestre Classique de Montréal, and I have with me three wonderful individuals who are central to this program from Yerevan to Montreal that we are about to present. And they are composer Kevork Andonian, soprano Aline Coutin, and one of our violinists, Van Arminian, who was very central to finding the material, some of the material that we're going to perform. It's a great deal of pleasure for me to have this forum with all of you talking about this concert. So I'm going to start off by asking, what's Armenian music? Quelle est la musique arménienne? Comment est-ce que c'est différent des autres musiques? Peut-être je peux demander à Aline, premièrement, de nous expliquer ça en français.
Je pense que mes collègues peuvent expliquer ça plus dans le côté musicologie, mais c'est une musique modale, souvent très, très poignant avec le mode mineur. Et c'est une musique qui parle à tous les Arméniens parce qu'on est baigné dans cette musique. Bien sûr, ce modalité, on essaie d'écrire les compositions dans les traditions. Il y a de la musique que Vartabet Gomidas, qui a compilé la musique traditionnelle folklorique de tout le pays arménien qui a noté cette musique-là. Et grâce à lui, on a une richesse de beaucoup de musique folklorique qui reste encore à nous.
So Van, perhaps you might explain from your point of view, using perhaps a greater degree of musicological information, and maybe Kevork as well, what exactly is Armenian music?
Well, I think like for any nation, the music is really core to defining a nation, just like Jewish music is very important for...
Oh, that opens up a can of worms. I'd be happy to go there if you like, but...
Armenians, who went through a genocide, and were spread all over the world, escaping the genocide. Music was a very important element in preserving the identity of the Armenian people, and of course the spiritual element. Like Aline said very precisely, Gomidas Vartabed was essential in preserving that culture, because just before the genocide, he collected thousands of songs from the different villages in the Ottoman Empire. And thanks to him, a lot of that culture has survived. And since then, composers of Armenian origin have used and have been inspired by the folk music, namely Khachaturian will be playing some of his works, right? And of course, the Anush opera that Aline will sing is very folkloric. So we have to listen to that music with that in mind. It's not a European, although it's with the European orchestra, but it's a very folkloric music.
Est-ce qu'il y a un orchestre arménien avec des différents instruments que nous jouons aujourd'hui, des instruments classiques comme le violoncelle, le piano, etc.? Est-ce qu'il y a des instruments vraiment folkloriques, Van?
Oui, alors il y a tout un ensemble d'instruments folkloriques comme le kemancha, le tar, le canon. Alors, le dohol. Alors, oui, on a toutes sortes d'instruments folkloriques.
Est-ce que ces instruments sont plutôt des instruments de l'Est, disons plutôt vers l'arabe, vers la culture arabe, ou est-ce que c'est complètement différent?
Non, c'est le doudouk, c'est l'instrument peut-être le plus connu, n'est-ce pas? Parce que c'est utilisé beaucoup dans les films de Hollywood et tout ça. Tous les moments très tristes, ils utilisent le doudouk parce que le doudouk, c'est un instrument qui est utilisé pour les funérailles en Arménie. Alors, c'est un son très spécial que on peut trouver dans des grands films. Peut-être, Kevork, tu te rappelles des noms des films dans lesquels il y a le doudouk?
Il y a tellement beaucoup de films qui utilisent le doudouk. Oui, c'est un instrument mélancolique. C'est plutôt... le doudouk a un timbre très unique. C'est comme l'instrument qui peut plutôt... I'll say it in English.
Yes, please. Go into English, sure.
Yeah, the duduk is an instrument the most has the timbre the most unique, which exemplifies the Armenian culture and also the struggles that the Armenians have had to face over the years. And there is actually a lot of samples that use just the duduk, and you can do a lot of different variations using MIDI. And that gives a very unique feel to your film scores and your film cues as well. And going back to Armenian music in general, like in many other countries, we have the Armenian classical, the folk, and also the liturgical. And one of the pieces that will be performed by myself, that I composed, called Revival, is actually a transcription, more or less, arrangement transcription of a Haimer that I wrote as part of my doctoral studies here at UCLA, which uses the Our Father in Armenian. And I used the word revival because once we decided on this concert, we had the war between Artsakh and Azerbaijan. And I said, maybe it'd be nice to use this opportunity to have a premiere of this a cappella choir piece that I've written for putting the words, the Our Father in Armenian to music. And that's going to be the second piece that will be performed that I wrote.
But now both of these works are purely instrumental. When you say, so well, maybe this is a good moment for you to talk about your works. Okay. Why don't you tell us a little bit about each of the works and what we're to expect?
Absolutely. The Lament is a piece for string quartet that I wrote originally. It's going to be a premiere in terms of having a string orchestra perform it. And then the second piece is called Revival, and it's originally for a cappella choir that I transcribed, arranged for string orchestra, and that's going to be the world premiere. There's no choir, but it's the music that I wrote originally for choir that's going to be performed by a string orchestra.
When you say Our Father, this is the prayer that we all know.
Yes.
Within the Christian church. Our Father who art in heaven,
yes.
hallowed be thy name.
Yes, and Gomi Das wrote his own version of the Our Father, and there is another composer, Yerevan, who also wrote not only Our Father, but the entire Armenian Mass. And then Gomi Das has his own version of the Mass. And his version is more contrapuntal, polyphonic, whereas Yerevan's is more homophonic, and you can even say chordal. And there's two versions of the Armenian Mass that's performed. The Yerevan is a little bit more performed more often, but Gomi Das also had written his own version of the Armenian liturgical Mass, and it's more polyphonic because he actually studied in Europe and knew Baroque contrapuntal technique very well. yes.
So apart from being folkloric oriented, there's a strong religious connotation to Armenian music from what you're telling me.
Yes, absolutely. But we also have the folk music that's performed at various occasions, weddings, funerals, and the like, using our own folk instruments. And as Van Armenian and also Ali mentioned, we have quite a few of them, but the one that's most, as I said, most nationalistic and maybe the most unique is the duduk.
Mais le religion, c'est une religion chrétienne, non?
Oui.
Okay.
Les Arméniens sont le peuple qui ont reconnu le christianisme d'abord. Was the first people who accepted it officially in the world.
Really interesting. I didn't know that.
Yes.
So
actually, a nice segue is on the 1700th anniversary of adopting Christianity, Aline went to Armenia to sing Anush, right? Aline?
Aline, your microphone.
Yes. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, actually, I went to Michigan, Detroit, to sing Anush that year, that 1700th anniversary, with Rafi Armenian conducting, and it was a really moving experience because we were singing in Armenian. It had been previously put on that stage 20 years previously, because there's a big Armenian community in Michigan, and they had wanted it performed. But at that time, I think they thought that Armenian language would be difficult to sell as an opera. But 20 years ago, we were able to do that in Armenian, and to see everybody singing in the language I know was quite moving. And then I went to Armenia in 2008, and I performed Anush there at the Yerevan State Opera. And that was another moving experience, because it was just unbelievable to be in the homeland of that country, of that opera. It's like performing Italian opera in Italy, basically, or yeah.
C'est tellement spécial pour nous, comme Orchestre classique de Montréal, de mettre en vedette la musique d'une culture dont on a une grande population à Montréal qui sont d'origine arménienne, mais aussi de transmettre cette culture aux gens qui ne sont pas de cette culture, pour mieux savoir le peuple et la culture arménienne. Alors, pour moi, je trouve en cette série de concerts qu'on appelle Tournée du monde, de donner vraiment de vedette à l'arménien comme peuple et musique important. Et je pense que tout le monde qui entend ce concert vont vraiment admirer et vont bien aimer cette musique qui a toute des couleurs complètement diverses, qui sont très importantes, je pense, et qui sont très attirants pour les gens en général. This is music that really everyone will enjoy. It's music that has a melodic basis. It's very melodic. That in many ways, I mean, my cultural background is Jewish. I always say Jewish, because I'm really a polyglot. I'm Christian. I'm sort of like a chameleon. Depending, when I go to a church, I'm Christian. When I go to wherever I am, I'm of that religion. I adopt it. So I think that's really important. Perhaps one of you might tell us a little bit about the story of Anush. Before I do that, I should really explain. People are going to wonder, Rafi Armenian, Van Armenian, you are brothers. Is that not right, Van? You and Rafi are brothers.
Oh, he's my uncle, my father's brother.
Your uncle? I didn't realize that. My goodness, I always thought that you were brothers. I don't know why. Of course, Rafi Armenian is a celebrated Canadian conductor of Armenian background, and I had a lot to do with his original appointment in Kitchener as conductor of the Kitchener-Waterloo Symphony, where he really developed that orchestra into a phenomenal professional entity, which it enjoys today, helped build a concert hall. Anyway, Rafi and I are close friends, and coming back to Montreal, he became the director general of the Conservatoire de Musique in Montreal, and also brought tremendous innovation to that institution. And so it's kind of a family affair, if you will, to have you involved with us, and Aline as well. And also, I must say Kevork, because I've been a particular supporter of Kevork's music, and we've performed it before, and we are looking towards another collaboration in the future. So,
and yes, and
go
if
ahead.
I may, both Boris Brott and Rock Armenian have been very, very important in my musical development. Rock Armenian and I and my family have been very close friends for many, many years, actually. And both Rafi and Boris have been very, very instrumental in my musical development. So thank you to both, and especially to Boris, again, for having the opportunity for me to perform two of my newer pieces, put it that way.
Well, that's great. So let's turn to Anush, because one of the difficulties, of course, about this program is that about Anush is that it's an opera, and it will be performed in a language which is completely foreign to most of us who aren't Armenian, in a sense, the language of Armenian, and we won't have subtitles. So it's really important now, Aline, to explain exactly what the story is of Anush, and what is the music that we're going to hear, and how does it relate?
J'aimerais d'abord dire que la musique, ça nous réunit comme culture. N'importe quelle culture, c'est sûr que chaque culture a leur goût de quelque chose comme la cuisine chinoise ou une cuisine coréenne, c'est différent, mais les goûts de prendre, our ears actually take in this music, and we are transported to the same feelings through another culture. So, la musique est un langage qui nous réunit tous. Pour moi, Anush est une histoire qui est racontée souvent dans l'histoire de toutes les histoires. C'est une histoire d'amour entre une jeune paysanne, between Anush, a peasant girl, and her lover Saro, who is a shepherd boy. Et aussi honor, l'honneur d'une famille, et the trespassing of that honor between what will happen is, well, I won't go into detail because I'm not singing that, mais entre le frère de Anush et son amant, il y aura une dispute, et avec ça, son frère va tuer l'amant de Anush. So this will, of course, become a very difficult thing for Anush to deal with. And she actually, before that happens, she will have run away with her lover, but the brother will come
Sounds like
after.
Romeo and Juliet a lot.
Well, yeah, quite a bit. So that's why I say it's a universal story. It's not only pertaining to Armenian story, but this is something that happens in all cultures. And c'est ça. Donc, à la fin, elle va malheureusement commencer à perdre she will lose her senses, and she will slowly start hearing voices of the river Debet in Armenia that is calling, that the fairies of the river will be calling her to come and join her lover. And she will at the end, on a high note, throw herself down the river. So it's a little bit of Tosca as well as a little Romeo Juliet.
It's an opera all with the same.
Yeah.
Just change the name.
So, but dans les thèmes d'opéra, c'est très universel, et ça rejoint cette universalité musicale. Et c'est toujours, même quand j'ai chanté ça à Michigan Opera, il y avait des gens qui n'étaient pas arméniens qui sont venus me voir après pour me féliciter, qui avaient des larmes dans les yeux, parce que c'est une histoire qui leur a parlé aussi. C'est pas juste c'est parce que c'est une it's not an Armenian theme, it's a universal theme.
Of course. Well, I think the music itself, one doesn't necessarily need to know the text, because one can tell from the music itself what's going on. I mean, it has an emotional, it immediately speaks to you emotionally. The music is not difficult in the sense of being contemporary to the point where you won't feel, it won't necessarily although contemporary composers may argue with me about whether their music actually has feelings or doesn't, but that's the subject for another forum. And the same with Kevork's music. One of the things that I find attractive about it is that it speaks in a language that everyone can understand. It's a language that speaks to us emotionally. Now, I should mention a few things. First of all, the concert is a fundraiser for the Atkin Armenian Foundation, which is your foundation, Van, right? A foundation in your father's name. Tell us a little bit about the foundation and what it supports.
Well, 11 years ago, my father passed away. He was only 63 years old. And so that's Rafi's brother, Atkin, Armenian. And he was very much involved in Armenia. In fact, he lived in Armenia, and he had hundreds of different projects to help rebuild that country after the Soviet Union fell apart. So since Rafi and I are in music, we decided to focus on music, and we focused on the regions of Armenia. So what we do is we find talents in Armenia, world-class talents, but in very remote places. We have, for example, found a shepherd boy, in fact, like Saro, in a mountain village, and we trained him with one of our teachers there, and now he's in the conservatory, one of the top tenors conservatory in Yerevan. And we have many other examples of students who have gone to Italy to win competitions, and in Moscow. We also have an instrument bank. There's a very, very talented young girl who won a big competition in Russia recently. We bought her a piano, a grand piano, so that she can practice, because she lives in a remote village, but she goes to Tbilisi every month, study with a very good piano teacher. So that's apart from music, we actually work in agricultural development and healthcare development, and recently with internally displaced from the war in Artsakh, we collected a lot of funds to help house these people who are now homeless. But that's our goal, is to find these exceptional talents who one day, like Aline, will represent the nation on the world stage. And I thank very much the OCM for accepting to help us raise funds for this cause. It's a very moving for us that the Canadian public will help these underprivileged children that we try to empower.
Et on vous remercie aussi parce que vous avez trouvé la musique, les arrangements de l'opéra pour ensemble à cordes et piano. L'original, c'est pour grand orchestre, alors il fallait vraiment trouver un arrangement pour le jouer avec l'Orchestre classique de Montréal, qui est prédominamment, c'est un orchestre à cordes, et vous avez trouvé on espère que vous allez... Il y a encore une morceau qui n'est pas arrivé, mais j'espère que ça arrivera
très
prochainement.
C'est vraiment un très bel arrangement. Peut-être après le concert, on demandera à Aline si elle a préféré cet arrangement à l'original, peut-être. Parce que c'est vraiment bien écrit, l'arrangement. Et la fin, il y a même un petit changement que l'arrangeur Chakalan a ajouté, qui est vraiment très spécial. Alors, oui, on a bien hâte d'entendre.
Ce programme est un peu une affaire familiale. On a les Arméniens, on a Kevork et son père, et aussi ma famille, mon père, Alexander Brott, qui est le fondateur de l'Orchestre classique de Montréal, qui était nommé l'Orchestre de Chambre McGill autrefois. Et le Fondation Azrieli ont donné l'opportunité vraiment d'entendre chaque année les œuvres d'Alexander Brott en donnant un concert, en commandité un concert spécialement pour jouer ses œuvres. Et ce concert-ci sera aussi une opportunité de faire entendre des œuvres d'Alexander Brott. Nous allons jouer 2 œuvres, une qui s'appelle Songs of Contemplation et l'autre qui s'appelle Ritual. Je parle d'abord de l'œuvre qui s'appelle Ritual et c'est vraiment un rituel, c'est la même chose en anglais et en français, c'est une cérémonie et ça peut être une cérémonie de n'importe quelle religion. C'est un entretien entre quatuor à cordes et orchestre à cordes. Et le deuxième œuvre, c'est une série de chansons des poètes plutôt anglais, R.M. Milnes, Strangers Yet, Grief, un poème anonyme, and The Sun's Shame by Dante Rossetti. Et au milieu, une chanson qui s'appelle Cradle Song, qui a été écrite pour ma naissance. Et c'est sur un poème de Alfred Lloyd Tennyson. Et Aline va chanter ces 4 chansons.
Oui.
Maybe I should ask Aline what she thinks of these songs.
J'ai eu beaucoup de plaisir à apprendre. C'est la musique, merveilleuse musique qui parle au cœur, qui parle de la vérité d'une certaine manière, comme on a constaté avec Boris que la musique arménienne et la musique juive se rencontrent d'une certaine manière parce qu'il y a beaucoup de similarités et que moi, je comprends cette musique profondément d'une certaine manière et j'aime beaucoup le texte qui se marie avec la musique.
Il faut dire que la musique de mon père divise en 3 sortes de musique. Premièrement, c'est une musique, vraiment musique de film. C'est une musique très dramatique, une musique harmonique et une musique plutôt romantique, post-romantic style of music. And these 2 pieces are very much in that style. He then got caught up in the 12-tone system, and then this music got more and more less romantic, always though very highly orchestrated in the sense of color. And even though this is only for strings and voice, I find this music tremendously colorful in terms of its language. And of course, I have a particular connection with it because the Cradle Song was written for my birth. Mind you, he had to change the words slightly to make it work, because in the original, the character, the bird, is a female bird. However, in order to make it work for me, he had to change her to his so that it would work for me. But I'm supposed that it really is a cradle song for all genders. Today we talk about multiple genders, not just male and female. And I think this song really appeals to all genders because it's the story of a child whose real purpose in life is to flee the nest, is to go away from their parents, vraiment de s'échapper de ses parents. Et c'est la chose qui est difficile, je pense, pour tous les parents, de se rendre compte que nous donnons la vie à un enfant pour qu'il parte. Pas qu'on le tient, mais qu'on est responsable de donner de l'éducation, de tout vraiment pour faire que cet enfant vit de ses ressources. So, you know, we're all involved as parents in helping the child disappear from our nest. And that's difficult for parents. I think it's very hard to do that. And certainly I found in the case of our children, but somehow they always come back. I don't know why that is, but they always manage to come back. No whatever age they are, all of a sudden they're in their 40s and they're back again. now with their children and their problems, whereas their problems as young children were problems you could deal with. Problems as they get older get more and more difficult to deal with because you don't know the answers yourself. So it's an interesting journey. One of the books of poetry that I like is a Middle Eastern book by Khalil Gibran called The Prophet. Je ne sais pas si ça se traduit en arménien, en anglais et en français. Connaissez-vous cette livre?
Je l'ai lu déjà en français et en anglais, oui.
Oui, voilà. And Gibran really his philosophy has really guided me in my philosophy with the idea of parenting and marriage and all aspects. And in fact, my father took a number of those poems and set them to music because he believed very much in that philosophy.
Yeah, our children come through us, but they're not of us.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, your children are not your children; they're the children of the future.
Yeah.
And I think, go ahead, Aline.
Sorry, and I've particularly enjoyed also Strangers Yet, the first piece, that is so poignant because the poet says that we are strangers even in relationships with our marriages, even with our relationship to our children, even with all the things we have with our parents. We are like circles onto circle rather than we don't really quite get to meet each other, but yet we are strangers and yet we are still in those relationships, and it's quite poignant. The music is so beautifully written to the text.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed. I think these are among my father's, for me, his best works, the works that I like the best. I find it somewhat difficult I'm not particularly drawn to my father's dodecaphonic works, though I perform all his works. I find these works are more akin to my sense. I'm a romantic. Even when I deal with Baroque music, I'm still a romantic. I can't somehow get my head around the idea that there are no dynamics in music, that you can't have a crescendo or a diminuendo, that you in terms of Baroque performance practice. And it's the same with contemporary music. I don't know whether you find this, but maybe Van, you can talk a little bit, or Kevork. Je trouve que la musique moderne, la musique dodécaphonique, même si on essaie de s'échapper d'un schème harmonique, éventuellement, ça nous donne une harmonie. On sent cette tension et le relax de tension, même que c'est composé d'une manière pour éviter les tonalités.
I can start if you wish.
Yes,
it's a matter of what predominates. 12th music is mostly a linear philosophy. So yes, I mean the row itself is a linear entity. So what happens is that, and it's a contrapuntal result. But what happens is that it's not a question of monophony, right? I mean, the row that you start off with is a monophonic entity, linear monophonic entity. But when you start to have more than one line, you start getting this vertical byproduct happening. And you first start with intervals, right? And then when you start having three notes happening at the same time, you have a harmony that can be triadic if you're lucky or unlucky, depending on how you want to compose, and then how those vertical sonorities relate to one another, and then at the end of the day, yes, you'll get some kind of a vertical byproduct and result, and that becomes more jarring and more difficult to deal with than the fact that you only have 12 notes happening in a row that fill the chromatic scale in some manner. Vaughn, if you want to.
Well,
we must say that this program has no dodecaphonic music in it.
Okay.
This program is entirely romantic in every sense of the word, so it will not challenge anyone's ear to go find among the 12.
It's very chromatic, but it's not dodecaphonic.
That's correct. Well, chromaticism goes towards dodecaphonism in a certain way. Though I'm sure that Mr. Webern and Mr. Schoenberg might disagree with my assessment here.
Well, Arnold Schoenberg's most performed work is Transfigured Night, which is
well, that's a melodic work.
It's a very remote, a very late romantic melodic work that predates his 12-tone philosophy or system, if you want to use that word. It's probably a better word to use. And it's interesting that even though his system is very well known, you'll learn it in every 20th century composition class, and it's in every 20th century book about history of music and whatnot. In terms of it being performed, his music is definitely performed to this day, but his most performed recorded work is actually one of his earliest works called Transfigured Night, which predates his 12-tone system.
Well, people I think, are naturally drawn to a sense of tension and release in music. And
Absolutely.
when you remove that, even though I find within Webern 5 pieces and so on, I could go on, and maybe this is too far to take it in this forum, but I find that there's a sense of harmony that finds itself into these works, whether or not the composer intended. It's, the hypothesis was that we had written as much as there was to say in a harmonic language, and we had to develop a new language completely in order to express music.
Yes.
But I think that's not the case, and I certainly think that no matter what you do, music is going to find its way into tension and release. Mais c'est vraiment pas quelque chose qu'on doit parler plus, parce que ce programme, comme j'ai dit, c'est un programme de la musique romantique complètement, et j'espère que nos auditeurs vont bien comprendre cette musique et vont bien l'aimer.
Alors, peut-être c'est important de noter que la musique, c'est vraiment une esthétique. Alors, à l'époque de Schoenberg, il y avait une demande pour cette esthétique dans les arts aussi. Hein? Alors, ça reflétait là. Mais je pense que Schoenberg lui-même a dit que 12-tone music, c'est pour des compositeurs sans talent. N'est-ce pas? Si je ne me trompe pas. Après, il a comme accepté que ce qu'il avait fait.
Je n'ai pas lu ça, mais je peux comprendre qu'il parlait peut-être comme ça de la musique dodécaphonique. Eh bien, j'espère que tous les gens vont bien aimer ce concert, et je vous remercie tous pour être avec moi, de parler un peu de la musique, Kevork, et aussi Aline, et aussi Van. Kevork, you had something, a last...
Yeah, we should also mention that Aram Khachaturian's Masquerade will be performed. Aram Khachaturian is probably the most well-known Armenian composer who has been able to capture a worldwide audience. His Masquerade Suite will be performed. It's one of his most popular works, and he was one of the big 3 Soviet composers, along with Sostakovich and Prokofiev. His music is also very romantic, very accessible, very melodic. And uses a lot of Armenian traditional musical elements as well.
Yes, well, I'm glad you brought that up. Since he is not here to answer for himself, I thought we should talk about your music and Anush, perhaps more than the Khachaturian. Mais tout le monde peut vraiment aller sur YouTube et entendre cette suite de Mascarade, parce que ça existe en plusieurs représentations sur YouTube. Mais nous allons le jouer dans un arrangement pour orchestre à cordes de Nouran Arman, qui est une collègue de moi, un directeur musical du Toronto Sinfonietta. Toronto Sinfonia, je m'excuse.
Sinfonia Toronto. I've worked with them too many times, and he's also a very, very good, a great conductor.
Et ces arrangements sont vraiment magnifiques. Et j'utilise plusieurs fois ces arrangements, et nous avons une espèce d'accord entre l'Orchestre classique de Montréal et son orchestre Sinfonia à Toronto. Et je lui remercie beaucoup de nous avoir prêté ces arrangements, puisque comme ça, on peut jouer ces arrangements à Montréal. Mais aujourd'hui, c'est pas seulement à Montréal, c'est pour tout le monde, parce que ces concerts, quand ça va en ondes, quand ça va sur l'Internet, ça peut être entendu en Afrique, en Israël, en Chine, partout au monde. Nous avons quelque chose comme 47 différents pays qui ont apprécié notre musique par ces concerts sur l'Internet. Et je pense que même quand on va retourner de jouer pour le grand public, cette affaire d'avoir cette musique sur les ondes par l'Internet va continuer certainement. Ça nous a donné une voix internationale. Alors, je vous souhaite bonjour et bon concert et je vous verrai tous le 9 mars quand on va jouer ce concert. Et pour tous les gens qui entendent maintenant à 7h30, à partir de 7h30, le 9 mars, vous pouvez écouter sur l'Internet ce concert et ça reste sur l'Internet pour 2 semaines après notre première représentation. Alors, si vous avez envie d'écouter à 3 heures du matin, vous pouvez même aller sur Orchestre en français.ca et vous allez trouver ce concert. Vous pouvez l'écouter à n'importe quelle heure ça vous tente. You can listen to this concert whatever time you please, starting from 7:30 on March the 9th, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time in Montreal, but anywhere in the world from then on for 2 weeks. So we very much hope that our audience internationally will likewise enjoy this wonderful music. Merci à tous.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci
Au revoir.
beaucoup.